Hi everybody. Well, I thought we had a lot of snow last week, and of course we did, but somehow we have even more snow now. I think some of it's going to melt off this week, but it just kept coming, and boy did we get deep snow out there. I want to read a couple things for you here. Now, there's a lot of numbers, but I think you'll be able to follow along just fine with the main concept. It says, in July 1997, the proposed new Scottish Parliament building in Edinburgh was estimated to cost up to £40 million. By June 1999, the budget for the new building was £109 million. In April 2000, legislators imposed a £195 million cap on costs. By November 2001, they demanded an estimate of final cost, which was set at £241 million. That estimated final cost rose twice in 2002, ending the year at £294.6 million. It rose 3 times more in 2003, reaching £375.8 million by June. The building was finally completed in 2004 at an ultimate cost of roughly £431 million. Now, if you don't remember, the original estimated cost was £40 million. And one more little anecdote here. In 2002, a survey of American homeowners who had remodeled their kitchens found that, on average, they had expected the job to cost $18,658. In fact, they ended up paying an average of $38,769. So, about a $20,000 difference there. These are a couple pretty striking examples, and I guess they kind of show the sunk cost trap, which is the way that sometimes people will throw good money after bad. We get started on something, and once we're into it, we just have to keep going. You can't very well leave your kitchen half done, so you have to move forward. You're trapped. Now, I guess part of the lesson from these stories or from these statistics is that we need to count the cost realistically before we start. And maybe even when we count the cost, to expect or project some unforeseen surprises along the way. I don't know very much about estimating, especially about estimating buildings like the Scottish Parliament building, but whoever thought that the Scottish Parliament building would be about £40 million when it ended up being more like £430 million was pretty far off. I'm sure there were plenty of unforeseen and maybe some unforeseeable factors along the way. But these accounts, these examples, remind me of something that Jesus says in the Gospel of Luke near the height of his public popularity. Jesus is at a point where large crowds are traveling around with him. They follow him wherever he goes. It's like Jesus and the big caravan of followers. There's just crowds of them. And in the midst of this, at the height of his popularity, Jesus warns them about being naive about the cost of following him. And he uses a couple examples. He says, if you want to build a tower, you first sit down and estimate the cost to make sure you can complete it. Otherwise, you're going to end up being embarrassed, and people are going to say, you weren't prepared, you couldn't complete it. Or, Jesus says, if you're a king and you're about to go to war, you calculate your odds against your opponent's odds, how many soldiers you have, how many soldiers your opponent has, and if you can't follow through on the war, you send out a peace delegation before the war starts. As a bonus historical note, this example that Jesus uses is a not-so-subtle dig at Herod Antipas, who is a local politician. So Jesus points out with these examples to the crowds of people around him, people who are caught up in his popularity. He's pointing out you need to count the cost of being a disciple. And Jesus knew, despite his current popularity, that he wouldn't always be popular. In fact, right now he's traveling to Jerusalem where he'll be killed. And he knew that a lot of people in the crowds who were just swept up in his popularity, that they hadn't really counted the cost of following Jesus when it came to persecution or facing death. So, what does Jesus mean by counting the cost of following him? Or what does that cost look like? He tells us to count the cost. Well, what does he mean? He sums it up in a pretty stark statement. He says, "Those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples." That's pretty bleak. Those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples. And Jesus says that the cost of following him is to give up everything you have. And that ties right in with our Lent worship theme. This past Sunday was the first Sunday of Lent. We're coming up to the second Sunday of Lent. And our worship theme is cultivating and letting go. And following Jesus means letting go of other things, not putting our hope in other things, not putting our heart in other things above what we put in Jesus, to make Jesus primary. Now, what Jesus says about giving up everything else, letting go of everything else, that might sound pessimistic or bleak. But Jesus says it's actually a life-giving invitation. He says anyone who tries to save their life will lose it. That means that anyone who tries to hold on to other things on their own, anyone who tries to secure their own life or their own fate, that person is bound to lose their life. But then Jesus promises, but anyone who loses their life for me will find it. Jesus' message is a paradox, but he tells us, let go of your life. Lose it for me, and when you do that, you'll find real life. Hope that you have a great week, and we will see you again next time.